Next year will be my 7th year of photography, 5th doing street, and 4th of doing it professionally. And while I hope to keep on doing this for, God willing, another 50 years, I've learned a lot in the time that I've been photographing, and I've developed a strong idea of what matters to me. I found that the more I've learned about art, photography, myself, and where I'm going with this craft, the less I actually know. Now, on the flip side, what I've heard from folks who regard themselves as paragons of photography are well-intentioned habits that can sometimes be quite stringent, some of which we'll be discussing today. One of the earliest ideas I was taught by almost everybody older than me was to niche down, that if I wanted to stand out, I needed to create a hyper-specific target and dominate that initiative so strongly that if you did come to my little corner of the woods, you had to come through me. But as I got older and thought more about it, it doesn't really mean what people think it does. In niching down, you're essentially telling an artist, somebody who's turned their craft and imagination into a world of possibilities, to make themselves so small that they can increase their chances at being seen. It's kinda nonsense. The way I see photography right now, beyond a way to make a living, past a way to bring in a couple dollars, ahead of a hobby for collectors, is as a medium where you can be the author of your own life. Do you niche down your life? I talk about street photography online because it's my passion, but I photograph parks, my friends, I do assignments, events, everything. Your art is better when you lead with being a human being, not being this minuscule SEO term that happens to have a first and last name. I'm sure you've been told to niche down, and you're welcome to, but I'm more interested in being the niche myself, because with the traditional idea, in this digital age, all you're really doing is reducing yourself to such a degree that someone can seek you out for content easier, and that's just not something that I care to do anymore. The second adverse habit that seems to be especially rampant in photography is validating other photographers' ideas solely based on what someone else did in the past. I call this because so-and-so did it. I see so much of people drawing their entire system of values based off of an arbitrary selection of quotes from an arbitrary selection of photographers. Do you believe these things simply because they said them, or because you've actually put in the hours and have drawn similar conclusions? I think because photography is a relatively young medium, there's still spirited feelings about what the true expression of it is. Alfred Stieglitz and the Photo Secessionists advocated for their thoughts about it back in the day, claiming that photography can be as creative and powerful an artistic expression as painting. In 2024, that's just common sense. But at the time, folks believed that it was solely a documentary medium that paled in comparison to painting, as a simply recorded life. All I'm saying is that as much as people claim that they're open-minded today, a lot of y'all would have hated on Stieglitz. My thing is that people shouldn't follow things solely because someone relevant said or did them, but because there's an overlap in their system of artistic values and ideas. The final adverse photography idea that we'll focus on today is this notion of being one piece of gear away. My first camera was a Sony a7 III. Took decent portraits with it, but convinced myself that I was limited by the system. I know. So limited that I believed I needed something lighter to start practicing street photography, so I bought an A6400 in mid-2019. Makes no sense. Learning street photography went well, but I didn't like the colors of the A6400, so I gratefully but irresponsibly bought a Fujifilm X-H1 to continue my learning. But that was one of the most enjoyable, creatively inspired, and fun times of my life. Those gear switches were kind of nonsense. Now, while I'm glad that I did it because I love where I'm at now, I didn't really need to. I just needed more practice. I've had the part blessing, part fruit of labor reward of using almost every Fujifilm camera since 2020. And what I can tell you is that aside from preferences, ergonomics, and I'll even give you sensor size for certain things, most cameras made after 2018 can do almost any photography job. I'm not going to be the person who lies to you and says that gear doesn't matter though. No artist in any medium can look me with a straight face and say that. Cameras, sensors, lenses, guitars, paintbrushes, paints, they all have an effect and people have preferences. But this idea of being one piece of gear away often stems from lack somewhere else. To use myself as an example, in years past, that lack has stemmed from a need for inspiration. I would attempt to remedy it by buying new things. And I'd be lying if I said that it didn't work in the hyper short term. But it's not as sustainable as pursuing a new idea or project. Nowadays, I just work even when I'm not inspired, as discipline is a better antidote than motivation. Many years ago, that lack came from thinking that I needed more megapixels, even though I was far away from selling my first prints. I actually had a brief period where I was hesitant to do as much volume photography because I wasn't future-proofing my images with 40 megapixel sensors. But I didn't even understand the full strength of the 24 that I had. My main camera kit, all my photojournalism work at my full-time job is with a Fujifilm X-T3 and the kit lens. Yeah, it's old now, but it was an award-winning flagship back in the day. How quickly do we forget? Those early years of learning a new craft are crazy, but you want to balance the excitement with being as prepared as possible, so I get it. But often, and unfortunately, for many that preparation comes with a cost of over-reliance on outside opinions. I'm fortunate that I made the most of these mistakes within my first couple years of photography, and that I'm also a generally disagreeable person when it comes to my passions. But I think that the true artist owes it to their craft to integrate the wisdom of the past into their process and honor it through the creation of new work, not mold their purpose around the echoes of what's already been done, trying to reinvent someone else's unique expression. I invite you all to subscribe to my newsletter, Camera on Substack, where I'm writing about photography on a weekly basis. I'm like 13 pieces in and really enjoying it. My name is Dorian Coleman, and I'll see you in the next one.